But the pirates, full of courage, cut down the branches of trees and threw them on the way, that they might not stick in the dirt. Meanwhile those of Gibraltar fired with their great guns so furiously they could scarce hear nor see for the noise and smoke. Being past the wood, they came on firm ground, where they met with a battery of 6 guns, which immediately the Spaniards discharged upon them, all loaded with small bullets and pieces of iron, and the Spaniards sallying forth set upon them with such fury as caused the pirates to give way, few of them caring to advance towards the fort, many of them being already killed and wounded. This made them go back to seek another way, but the Spaniards having cut down many trees to hinder the passage, they could find none, but were forced to return to that they had left. Here the Spaniards continued to fire as before, nor would they sally out of their batteries to attack them any more. Lolonois and his companions, not being able to climb up the bastion of earth, were compelled to use an old stratagem, wherewith at last they deceived and overcame the Spaniards. Lolonois retired suddenly with all his men, making show as if he fled. Hereupon the Spaniards, crying out, "They flee, they flee! Let us follow them!" sallied forth with great disorder to the pursuit. Being drawn to some distance from the batteries, which was the pirates' only design, they turned upon them unexpectedly with sword in hand, and killed above 200 men, and thus, fighting their way through those who remained, they possessed themselves of the batteries. The Spaniards that remained abroad, giving themselves over for lost, fled to the woods. Those in the battery of 8 guns surrendered themselves, obtaining quarter for their lives. The pirates, being now become masters of the town, pulled down the Spanish colors and set up their own, taking prisoners as many as they could find. These they carried to the great church, where they raised a battery of several great guns, fearing lest the Spaniards that were fled should rally and come upon them again. But next day, being all fortified, their fears were over. They gathered the dead to bury them, being above 500 Spaniards, besides the wounded in the town, and those that died of their wounds in the woods. The pirates had also above 150 prisoners, and nigh 500 slaves, many women and children. Of their own companions only 40 were killed, and almost 80 wounded, whereof the greatest part died through the bad air, which brought fevers and other illness. They put the slain Spaniards into 2 great boats, and carrying them a quarter of a league to sea, they sunk the boats. This done, they gathered all the plate, household stuff, and merchandise they could, or thought convenient to carry away. The Spaniards, who had anything left, had hid it carefully, but the unsatisfied pirates, not contented with the riches they had got, sought for more goods and merchandise, not sparing those who lived in the fields, such as hunters and planters. They had scarce been 18 days on the place, when the greatest part of the prisoners died for hunger. For in the town were few provisions, especially of flesh, though they had some, but no sufficient quantity of flour of meal, and this the pirates had taken for themselves, as they also took the swine, cows, sheep, and poultry, without allowing any share to the poor prisoners. For these they only provided some small quantity of mules' and asses' flesh, and many who could not eat of that loathsome provision died for hunger, their stomachs not being accustomed to such sustenance. Of the prisoners many also died under the torment they sustained, to make them discover their money or jewels, and of these some had none, nor knew of none, and others, denying what they knew, endured such horrible deaths. Finally, after having been in possession of the town 4 entire weeks, they sent 4 of the prisoners to the Spaniards that were fled to the woods, demanding of them a ransom for not burning the town. The sum demanded was 10,000 pieces of 8, which, if not sent, they threatened to reduce it to ashes. For bringing in this money they allowed them only 2 days, but the Spaniards, not having been able to gather so punctually such a sum, the pirates fired many parts of the town, whereupon the inhabitants begged them to help quench the fire, and the ransom should be readily paid. The pirates condescended, helping as much as they could to stop the fire, but, notwithstanding all their best endeavors, one part of the town was ruined, especially the church belonging to the monastery was burned down. After they had received the said sum, they carried aboard all the riches they had got, with a great number of slaves which had not paid the ransom, for all the prisoners had sums of money set upon them, and the slaves were also commanded to be redeemed. Thence they returned to Maracaibo, where being arrived they found a general consternation in the whole city, to which they sent 3 or 4 prisoners to tell the governor and inhabitants they should bring 30,000 pieces of 8 aboard their ships for a ransom of their houses, otherwise they should be sacked anew and burned. Among these debates a party of pirates came on shore, and carried away the images, pictures, and bells of the great church aboard the fleet. The Spaniards who were sent to demand the sum aforesaid returned with orders to make some agreement, who concluded with the pirates to give for their ransom and liberty 20,000 pieces of 8 and 500 cows, provided that they should commit no further hostilities, but depart thence presently after payment of money and cattle. The one and the other being delivered, the whole fleet set sail, causing great joy to the inhabitants of Maracaibo to see themselves quit of them. But 3 days after they renewed their fears with admiration, seeing the pirates appear again, and re-enter the port with all their ships, but these apprehensions vanished upon hearing one of the pirates' errand, who come ashore from Lolonois, to demand a skillful pilot to conduct one of the greatest ships over the dangerous bank that lieth at the very entry of the lake, which petition, or rather command, was instantly granted. They had now been full 2 months in these towns, wherein they committed those cruel and insolent actions we have related. Departing thence, they took their course to Hispaniola, and arrived there in 8 days, casting anchor in a port called Isla de la Vaca, or Cow Island. This island is inhabited by French buccaneers, who mostly sell the flesh they hunt to pirates and others, who now and then put in there to victual or trade. Here they unladed their whole cargazon of riches, the usual storehouse of the pirates being commonly under the shelter of the buccaneers. Here they made a dividend of all their prizes and gains, according to the orders and degree of every one, as has been mentioned before. Having made an exact calculation of all their plunder, they found in ready money 260,000 pieces of 8, this being divided, every one received for his share in money, as also in silk, linen, and other commodities, to the value of 100 pieces of 8. Those who had been wounded received their first part, after the rate mentioned before, for the loss of their limbs. Then they weighed all the plate uncoined, reckoning 10 pieces of 8 to a pound. The jewels were prized indifferently, either too high or too low, by reason of their ignorance. This done, every one was put to his oath again, that he had not smuggled anything from the common stock. Hence they proceeded to the dividend of the shares of such as were dead in battle, or otherwise these shares were given to their friends to be kept entire for them, and to be delivered in due time to their nearest relations or their apparent lawful heirs. The whole dividend being finished, they set sail for Tortuga. Here they arrived a month after, to the great joy of most of the island, for as to the common pirates, in 3 weeks they had scarce any money left, having spent it all in things of little value, or lost it at play. Here had arrived, not long before them, 2 French ships, with wine and brandy and such like commodities, whereby these liquors, at the arrival of the pirates, were indifferent cheap. But this lasted not long, for soon after they were enhanced extremely, a gallon of brandy being sold for 4 pieces of 8. The governor of the island bought of the pirates the whole cargo of the ship, laden with cocoa, giving for that rich commodity scarce the 20th part of its worth, Thus they made shift to lose and spend the riches they had got,